Hello and welcome to the Wisepreneurs podcast. My name is Nigel Rawlins and I work with a range of women who are professionals in their field. They're often 50 to 60 years old who want to start their own business. In this podcast, I'll be interviewing a range of guests who will be able to tell you how they've done it themselves, and others who will give you hints and ideas and tips and maybe the confidence you need to go out and start your own business. I'm interviewing Lisa Marie Cabrelli. I came across Lisa while I was trying to learn how to use Roam Research. It's an amazing note-taking app that I came across a couple of years ago. It's a way to store your notes rather than on notebooks and bits of paper or sticky notes and things like that. It's sort of like a database, and you put all your notes in there and then you can search and it'll actually connect them together. But I really needed to find out how to use it better. Now, I'd been doing a few courses to get my head around it, and then I came across Lisa's course, which was called the Magical Note-Taking Course for Roam Research. It was all about her system for taking notes that she could use to do her PhD in literature that she was doing at the time. And I did the course and I thought it was fantastic because it was so well organized. And I thought, wow, this person's got a really good story to tell you about her life and ending up in Scotland and doing a PhD. So see what you think. Welcome, Lisa, to the Wisepreneurs podcast. Could you tell our listeners how you got to where you are today, and then we'll chat about some of those things as we go along.
Sure. My name's Lisa Marie Cabrelli. I actually was born in England and my family emigrated to the United States when I was a teenager. I had most of my schooling in the US and I started out as an actress. That was my desire, to become a professional actress. And I had a lot of training in New York City and actually worked as an actress in New York City for about 8 years before I decided that I wanted to have a proper life. And so I actually went into corporate America, and I went to corporate America as a business systems analyst. I did a lot of software design and process engineering. And then in 2006, I worked for a major telecom in the US, and they had a leaving package. So I was very lucky to get a leaving package with which I decided to start my own company. I didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted to do. So I started writing business plans, and I would write a business plan and I would hand it to my husband and he would read it and throw it in the garbage. And then I would write another one. And eventually, it's a long story, so I won't tell it here, but I ended up doing e-commerce. So at the very beginning of Google SEO was becoming popular. That's search engine optimization. If you don't know, I identified through an evaluation of what people were searching for and what there was a gap for a particular product in the United States, which maybe your listeners won't know, but it's called the American Girl doll. It's a specific doll for children. Very expensive. There's clothing and furniture that goes with that doll. And I became like the low cost version of accessories for American Girl doll. And I went to China and I set up factories in China and I ran that. And I started from nothing. I had $500 for inventory and I had a book on how to build a Yahoo Store. I had never done anything on the web before. And I started really doing SEO, search engine optimization. So within the first month, I think, of my store being up, I was on the first page for about 60 of the long tail keywords. That started well from the beginning. And after 8 years, I realized that it was getting very big. The reason I started the company was because my daughter was very young and I wanted the opportunity to work from home and also to have the ability to work from wherever I was. So I was doing a pandemic kind of approach to life way back in 2006. So as long as I had a Wi-Fi connection, this business could go wherever I went because I had a warehouse, but it was in Kentucky and it was run by somebody in Kentucky. I had employees in New Jersey. My customer service was in the Philippines. I had my web person. So it was like all over the world, but really it was just basically run from my laptop. It got too big. It got to the point where in order for it to get bigger, I was going to have to put a lot of money into it. And I was going to have to really get some full-time employees in, and it was going to become this big thing. Whereas I'd been working very comfortably. Of course, in the beginning, I worked like 60 hours a week, but by the time it was the end, I was very, very comfortable with the amount of work. but I was already into the multi-millions of revenue and it was a bit scary for me. I decided that I didn't really need to have a multi-million dollar company. So I sold it and I listed it on a Tuesday afternoon and I got an offer on a Wednesday morning. And I was 45 at the time. And it basically meant that I could retire. My husband had already retired. He's quite a bit older than me. And my daughter had left and was on her way to university. It was like the perfect time for me to retire. So I sold the company and I retired. And I thought, what is it that you want to do? What have you really wanted to do your entire life? And it was to write books. So I always wanted to write a novel. And I got really interested in self-publishing because it's like the combination of the two things I love, which is business and creativity. And so I started self-publishing. I published about 4 novels. And then we found out that we had to go to Scotland. My mother-in-law, unfortunately, got dementia. And so she needed somebody there to take care of her. And because we were going over there, there was an opportunity to do a master's degree in crime fiction. And so I thought, well, that will be fun. While I'm over there, I could do that. And so I applied and I got in. And then I went and did my master's degree. And at the end of my master's degree, my supervisor of the master's, the head of the program for the master's degree said to me, "We really would love for you to come and do a PhD." And I thought, why not? So not probably my smartest decision because a PhD is a lot more work than you could possibly imagine. But I went in to do my PhD. And as I was doing my PhD, this is a long story to get to where we are, what we're talking about today. But as I was getting into my PhD, I thought I really need a tool. I really need something to capture all of these notes. And I don't want to be one of these academics who sits at a desk with like piles of books and printouts and highlights and tags all around them. There must be something. And so I actually called a friend of mine who was developing software and I spoke to the software development team and I said, look, I have this idea for this system, for this software system, and I've done software development and I know what I'm doing. So I'd really like to develop the system where everything links together and it has a graph so that you can like click on one thing and you can go and see the other thing, and that I can keep all of my interests like in buckets so I can easily find things. Can we make that? And the software developer was like, yeah, we can make that. It will cost $100,000 and then you'd have to sell it. And I'm thinking, okay, do I really want to start another business? Like I loved doing businesses. While I was thinking through this, I came across Rome Research and I opened Rome Research and that daily notes page just, looked at me and I just started typing and I went and I did Nat Eliason's course. And I also took the free YouTube course that doesn't exist anymore by Anonymous. And I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I was looking for. And so I started using it to do my PhD. And as I was using it and I was developing my own processes, I thought people are going to need these processes. So academics or other people are going to need to know how to use this for the kind of thing that I'm doing, which is to produce a dissertation, a thesis, or an academic paper. And I'm not an academic, but I have this mix of being new to academia and really understanding process, which I don't think a lot of academics necessarily do, like regular, especially humanities academics. So I'm always business minded. And so I thought I'll just productize what I'm learning. So that's what I did. I basically built the Rome Research course as I was learning how to use it myself. And I released it for free. And one of the people came back to me and said, you shouldn't be releasing this for free. You should just make this into a course. So I re-recorded it. I made it into a course. And then I thought, well, I really want to be a brand. I just don't want to release this course. And so I thought about the way I want to use Rome. I'm a producer. That's what I do. That's what I've done my whole life. That's what I enjoy doing. It took me a whole lifetime to figure out that the reason why I can't settle on one thing is because my one thing is producing. So it doesn't matter what area you produce in, you just are a producer. So anyway, that was a really long introduction. Sorry about that, but you said tell me from the beginning. So like, okay, how can I say it from the beginning and fit that all in? So that's my life story in a nutshell.
That is fantastic. That's how I came across Rome Research. So I was going to get you to explain it. But the interesting thing is you've had a business background. So, and the other interesting thing is you started off as an actress and then went into business, working for other businesses, then working for yourself, and then growing that business. But the thing I've noticed about you, because I've been doing your magical academic Roman writing course, which I've found fabulous because I've done a lot of Rome courses, but your one was the most practical. Now, a lot of people probably listening to this are wondering what the hell is Rome research? So maybe we better deal with that. And then we'll maybe
Sure.
talk about some of the other things. So what is Rome research to you? How did you define it?
So I would say that Rome Research is a tool that supports your brain. Like I was saying in the introductory part, is I do a lot of thinking, perhaps too much. And I always try and have notes on what I'm researching, what I'm thinking about, what I'm developing. And I've used Evernote for a very long time, probably since it came out. And what I found was is that my notes went in, but I couldn't get them back out again. Rome Research is a tool that allows you to link all of your thoughts together, exactly like I was thinking when I proposed it to these software developers. Link all of your thoughts together so that when you are ready to think about something, it's really easy to draw all those thoughts and all of your notes and everything you'd worked on back out as though you were digging in your brain, and you can start immediately because everything is there in front of you. You don't have to spend weeks digging through Evernote and rereading everything you've done before. The key to what makes Rome Research brilliant is the connections. You can connect every single thing that you think to everything you've thought before. And so it's really easy to basically mimic the way your brain works with a piece of software.
And the way we bring it out is we do a search. You could search for keywords or you can search for a word and it finds it. But that's why I loved your program. I did a whole lot of Rome research training with all the different people, but yours was the most practical. What I noticed about yours is, and I think it comes through from your software background and running a business, you have systems in place and processes in place. And it's very obvious that you think things through. And as a result, the things you produce are very practical.
Good. I'm glad that you found them that way. That's really good. I'd love to hear people who enjoy the course.
I'd highly recommend. The people I generally work with tend to be experts in their field. They've spent many years building up their expertise. To market themselves as they're older, they need to take notes, write blog articles or create content or create social media. But again, like you said, with most academics, they have piles of paper and highlights. So Rome is one way that they can do that. Now, I did notice that you're putting together a program probably for entrepreneurs. Is that the case?
I need to make some decisions on what's next for me, and I will continue with my creative writing. I really enjoy writing books, and so I'll continue to write novels. But at the same time, I think I'm going to start developing courses for other areas of Rome Research, including for management, really, because I have a huge ultimate life planning course that I used to teach that is really fun and would work really well on Rome, and also for entrepreneurs. So I have some other business courses that would work really well on Rome, and also for creative writing. So the thing is that a lot of people, when they're teaching Rome, they're specifically just teaching how to use Rome. There's few that teach it for a specific subject. Lucas does. He teaches Cite to Write for academics, which is also another really good academic course worth taking. But I think that there is space in the Rome Research user base to also have courses for specific results that include more than just using Rome, but include tools and skills that are part of the particular subject area that you're teaching in. So like my academic course, which doesn't just teach how to use Rome, it teaches how to get from A to B to finish a paper. I would do the same for business and for creative writing.
Yeah, that's what I liked about your processes, because if we're talking about how do you market, how do you think about your revenue, how do you think about selling, how do you think about business and things like that, I think that would be very exciting if you put that together, because I understand your frameworks. Now, one of the things we were having a chat before we started was making choices, and you were discussing how you actively choose. Could you tell us something more about how you how choice and choosing comes into your life?
Like I said, I have a course that I haven't taught in a while, but I used to teach quite frequently, called Ultimate Life Planning. And it's for folks who want a process for life, who say, I have goals. I kind of think I have goals, but I never seem to get anywhere, and I never seem to move forward, or I'm stuck. A lot of people get stuck in life. And so as part of the Ultimate Life course, I talk about being a choice agent and how your first job in life is to teach yourself how to choose. That most of us live our lives being extremely reactive. So we have a life prescribed for us, or a life that we expect. And so instead of actively going out there and deciding what we want out of life, we just accept what comes our way. And we don't recognize that for the most part, obviously there's folks who aren't as lucky as we are, but for the most part, every single day, we have choices that we can make that will shift the track of our life. And I always say that choice creates change, and it's change that creates opportunity. So many people are afraid of change. And because they're afraid of change, they won't make choices. And because they won't make choices, they won't make change and they won't get any opportunities. So it's like this line that you need to follow, and you need to start with making active choices. So I actually have exercises and things that I teach people to say, here, recognize that you have choices every day. Because a lot of people don't even recognize that. They just think, no, I don't have any choice. This is the way I have to live my day. I have a job. I have children. I have a house. I have a mortgage. I have to do all these things. And so we do exercises to teach people, no, you are the one who are making these choices. Even if you're not making choices, you're making choices. So choice agency is one of the things that I think is very important.
No, I totally agree there, because I'm thinking, well, with the people I tend to work with, they are older. Often they're 60 years old, and they have to make a choice about their lifestyle. And I would never recommend to anyone 60 years of age to go into business full time. It'd be nice to have some choice about lifestyle they'd like to have, because at 60, you may have grandchildren, or you may have children, or you may not. And you may want to travel, or you may want to read books or write books, as well as make out an income, which is the whole idea of self-employment. You mentioned before we started this that you also did some coaching. Was that for entrepreneurs?
That's right. Yeah. When I had my business, I started to get a lot of other women who were either in corporate business or in a job and wanted to do their own thing, to have kind of the same lifestyle that I had, which was a very free lifestyle, completely in control of my time, completely in control, of my home life. And so a lot of people started to notice. At the time, we had decided, this was about 2 years after my business took off, we had decided that we wanted a big change. And so we moved to the Bahamas. And so we lived in the Bahamas for 5 years. And it was during my time in the Bahamas that people were like, wait a minute, how do you live in the Bahamas? How is this possible for you? And so they said, my friend is really interested in what you're doing. Can you teach her? Can you do this? Can you do that? And so I started just having conversations with women, trying to help them start their own thing. And then after a while, I thought they kept referring more and more people to me, and it started taking up more and more time. And so I thought, I'm good at this business stuff. I know how to teach women how to do the business, but it's actually true that the business is completely incorporated with life. And so I went and took a life coaching course to make sure I had the skills. I felt I shouldn't really be teaching women how to start their own business unless I can help them with the other things that keep coming up, which are all related to being a mother, being a wife, having commitments, having responsibilities. So I took a life coaching course. And after I took the life coaching course, I started to actually coach. Laptop life coaching, grab your laptop, get a life kind of thing. And that was really fun. I did that for a long time, but it does take up a lot of time, and it is a huge responsibility. I tend to feel extremely responsible for the women that I'm coaching. And so whether they do well or don't do well, I take it really to heart. So I decided to take a break from that for a while.
No, that's great. So what were some of the things you'd recommend to women? Were they different ages, young or old?
4 different ages. Yeah. As you can imagine, the most of my coaching was based on process. I think that what happens is, if you don't come from a process engineering background and you're going into something as wide ranging as skills that a business needs, you need to understand how to implement processes to make sure that you can make the most of your time and your money. So I taught them how to save time and money and build processes. And then I taught them the basics of building a brand, how to do marketing, your customer neighborhood. I have just tons and tons of business coaching stuff. But basically, I think the most effective thing for people was process, because process doesn't only help you in your business life, it also helps you in your personal life as well.
So it's just, yeah. And again, that's what I see in your course. It just stood out. You had thought about everything. And I think That's one of the things I see out there with younger people who talk about business. It's only surface level. Whereas, and I think you doing your PhD, I'm assuming it helps you to think more deeply about things and to reflect on things. And I think that's a thing that comes with age, that we can actually see that. And that's what I saw straight away in your course is the processes. I was very impressed. Now, one of the things I saw on your website is angel investing. Are you doing any angel investing?
Sometimes, and it's usually extremely personal to me. My husband and I have supported, because of the sale of my business, we have had the opportunity to support some other folks in their business endeavors. Some have worked, some have not worked. But yes, if I feel very personally committed to a business idea, I will actually step in as an angel investor. I usually require that I have some kind of involvement as well in terms of just coaching or board membership or things like that.
No, I thought that was interesting. So how do you come across some of the things you're interested in? Is it just by chance?
Yeah, by chance. And also, I work for an incubator as well here in Scotland. And so sometimes there are folks that come through the incubator. As a coach, I work at the incubator, and it's just on a volunteer basis. Sometimes there are folks that come through the incubator that I target. And also sometimes there are just folks that come to me. I'm interested in bootstrapped businesses. I am not interested in businesses that need big, huge funding. It's not interesting to me. When I sold my business, I didn't have any debt and I owned it 100%. And that was the way that I could retire. A lot of people, once they start a business, they want to go out and get millions of dollars and they want to buy desks and they want to buy computers and hire people. And I'm not interested in that. And that's not my skill set.
That's the thing from the Americans. We always sort of hear them raising capital and venture funds, and we're wondering what's going on there, because most of mine are just self-employed. They work for themselves, and maybe they'll have some subcontractors, and that's what a lot of us do. We want to stay small, and yeah, they fund it themselves, and that's the big choice they make. So what you're talking about, bootstrapping, that means they put in the work themselves, and they may have a little bit of money. And I think that's probably the best businesses. And I think it brings a lot of satisfaction too. With the literature, you did the Masters in Crime Writing. What's involved in that, and also in the PhD? Because I'm interested to find out, once you've done your PhD, what are you going to do? Because that's a big time commitment you put in.
That's a really good question. And the answer is, I don't know. I have some ideas, but like I said before, I run my life based on processes and my ultimate life planning plan. And as part of my ultimate life planning plan, I have some what I call ultimate whys, which are some basic things that I know that I want out of life. And so every time I start to do something, I make sure that they are aligned with the basic things that my basic whys are things that drive me. And sometimes there are multiple options. The PhD was a big time commitment. I have discovered that academia is not something that I would enjoy long term. You talked a little bit about thinking more deeply, and that's absolutely true. But in another way, it's also restrictive. I've found that I'm way too interested in too many things to be an academic.
I think I actually saw that on one of your Twitter things, that you were straight to choose what you wanted to concentrate on. I saw that straight away and I think, gee,
Yeah.
If you could see the variety of books that I read, there's just so many different subject areas. Rarely business.
Yeah.
On a marketing services company, rarely do I read a business book. And that's what's so exciting. And that's probably the loveliest thing about being in control of your life like you are. Obviously, when you finish the PhD, you can maybe go across some of those areas. You're just going to see what happens. And you can, which is the best place to be. And I think that's something we've got to encourage for a lot of women is to be in that position where you do have some choices and you do have a choice about lifestyle. Is there anything else that you could think that maybe would be of interest that we could talk about here?
Just talking about women having choices for their lifestyle, I just want to make the point that when people first saw us living in the Bahamas and traveling and doing, because we basically were nomadic as well between leaving the Bahamas and actually moving to Scotland, we lived all over the world. And people look at that life and they think, I could never do that because I don't have enough money. And I just want to make the point that money is the least of everyone's problems. again, qualifying that as if you are a middle class, white, or you don't have any of the restrictions that many people have. But basically, if you're in a corporate job, or if you're capable of starting something for yourself, money is the least of your problems. You do not need as much money as you think in order to do exactly what you want and have the time to do what you want and have the freedom to do exactly what you want. You do not need as much money as you think you need. And I actually have exercises that show people how you can go through what you have and realize that you don't need as much money. But it's scary because people think that money is the solution to everything. And so that's the message, like, if you, to your clients, like I would give to these older women, is like, you don't need as much as you think you need.
Yeah.
Don't think about the money first. Think about what you want to do first, right? So one of my things that for my coaching, I used to say is, make your business work for you and don't spend your life working for your business.
Yes, exactly. No, I think that's really sensible. And I think that's the first thing. How much do we need? And you're right about middle class lives. In Australia, my age group often own their own homes. They often have little debt. The biggest danger is that they may have a well-paying job that gives them some status and stuff like that. But they don't need all that money if they have less debt. The other thing about some of the countries that live in, you're in Scotland, is that we have a free health system. And I think that's very important, because in America, they don't. And that can be very dangerous if you're self-employed there, because you may have no hospital coverage or health coverage. Whereas in Australia, we do. I think in Ireland, in Europe, I think they do. And definitely in England, they do. So that's often the backup that we all need.
You're right. That's a huge issue for Americans. So it is a huge kind of restriction to starting your own thing. That has to be part of your budget. You can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
Line item.
That's the scariest thing. I think we've just about covered everything. You've done pretty well. All right, let's just talk about books. Obviously, if you're studying your PhD, you've got some set texts and books and readings you have to do. What do you read for your pleasure?
Everything and anything I can get my hands on. No, I'm a huge fiction reader. And one of the real struggles for me as in this PhD is that I haven't had as much time as I would usually have to read fiction. I love every kind of fiction. So as part of my crime writing course, I obviously read a lot of crime fiction, which I love and I really enjoyed. I read, as for my PhD, I'm writing a dystopian novel. So I read a lot of dystopian. As my fun writing, what I wrote before I went back to school, I write rom-com, women's fiction, chick lit stuff that I really love writing because it's fun and it's easy. And I like to write that. And I like to read that. I read anything. I love any of the most popular literature that's out, everything. I read anything.
I've got this terrible habit of buying so many books that it's ridiculous, mainly nonfiction, but I use my Kindle to read fiction, and I've got a terrible habit of buying fantasy and stuff like that. But I've been getting so sick and tired of the simple stories. And then some of them, I've got 10 books in the series. By the time we get to number 3, I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to buy any more. Are you finding some of the stories are a bit simplistic, or is that normal nowadays, that what most people read?
I think that there are markets for both. So as part of my research for my PhD, I am specifically focused on popular fiction. So although I'm looking at a lot of literary theory and how literary study has impacted the role of the author, which is what my PhD is focused on, I'm looking at it specifically within the realm of popular fiction. And there's not much literary theory and critique about popular fiction until very recently. So I think that what you might be seeing is this movement that I kind of address in my PhD towards serving the common reader. Common, not in a derogatory term, but common in the most average common reader. What a lot of authors have identified is that there is a huge marketable space for writing the kind of fiction that you're talking about, which is what I call Netflix fiction, which is you just get to the end of the book and you just want to read the next novel. And that is actually what a lot of people like to read. Now, that doesn't mean that because there's a lot of that out there, that number one, it's not good, because there's a lot of really great series with complexity in fantasy and science fiction. And number two, that it's taking over the world, that there's not still room for really clever, complex, interesting, challenging literature. there's room for both. But I think what's happening is because this kind of Netflix literature is so widely available that folks are starting to read that and thinking that's the only thing, that is available and is out there. But I think there is still really, yes, there's a lot of junk fiction out there right now.
I buy it, but I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to do it again. So I must admit, I read something that was complex and very interesting, and I think it's become a bestseller, is How to Kill Your Family. I don't know if you've come across that book, but I was quite shocked. It was a crime novel by a female protagonist. That one I found interesting. So,
I
yes.
put that one down.
Yes.
Have you read any Tana French?
No, I'll write that one down. So how do you spell it?
She is Irish American, I think. She lives in Ireland, and she writes crime fiction, but she writes literary crime fiction. Her books are so well written. You're reading these books and you just have to stop and think about the prose. So she's a crime fiction novel where the story is great. It grips you. It's the same sort of intensive storyline, but the prose is absolutely beautiful.
I think the other one I'm reading at the moment is Colm's book about Thomas Mann, the magician, I think it's called. I think he's Irish as well. That's just come out. Yeah, no, I've got that one on my Kindle, but I'm reading about 5 different ones and one on vampires.
Oh, yeah, you've got to read a vampire. You've got to get a vampire book in there somewhere.
I know, it's terrible. All right, that's fabulous. Now, how are people going to keep in touch with you and find out more about you?
Yeah, they could go to my website, which is Laptop Life Lisa. And that's usually where I'll put things that I'm doing that are new. I'm not very super, if I had left my company and become a proper businesswoman, if that was what my goal was, I would be better at branding and making people aware of my brand. But I don't spend as much time on that. So if people want to see what I'm doing next, it's probably going to end up on that website, Laptop Life Lisa. If people are interested in Rome, I tweet mostly exclusively about Rome. So that if you're interested in Rome research, you can find me on Twitter, again, at Laptop Life Lisa. If you are interested in my travels, which are pretty, then Instagram is the place to find it. Because I post all my travels on Instagram at Laptop Life Lisa. And yeah, those are the locations. And also, if you want to learn more about the courses, the Rome courses, it's romeforresults.com.
Yes, no, I'll put all these in the show notes. I think those are very important. So anyone who's really interested in really systemizing how you take notes and using them and bringing them back out, your courses are brilliant for that. They're very practical. So I would highly recommend them. So thank you, Lisa. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for making the time to talk to me. And up and at 'em. I think that's what you say in your course, isn't it?
Onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards. That's it. I forgot it. But yes, it's always in the back of my mind hearing you say that when you finish your course. So thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. It was really nice to speak to you.
I hope you really enjoyed this interview today with Lisa. She's highly talented and I think she's got a lot to offer women entrepreneurs and women in business. And I think her Rome research course, if you're really interested in writing and things like this, is well done. So please have a look at the show notes because there's lots of links there for Lisa's stuff, including some of her novels that she's written. So thank you again for listening, and I look forward to you becoming a listener in the future.